right, welcome to our meeting. I wanted to just let you know that we are going to hear from some delightful authors from who are individually well known in their own right, but they are also members of something called the Author Talk Network. And I ran across this, and the members can tell us a little bit more about it. I ran across this when I was looking for speakers, and I happened to go to Saralyn Richard's website because I'm a fan of hers. And I saw something mentioned called the Author Talk Network. And I emailed her and I said, you know, is this, you all do presentations? And so from there, we came up with a trio of authors that were willing to come talk to us on the topic of how mysterious. And this will be a moderated panel and we'll ask them questions, but they have told me that the most important thing is that they want to hear the questions that you might have as their readers and as guests. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and start with Josie first with a question. And Josie, would you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about your work and what you'd like our members to know?
Great, thank you. I'm Josie Brown. I'm the author of 38 novels, going on 39 soon. And they span women's fiction, contemporary, as well as mystery. And I do have a political thriller as well. My mystery series is The Housewife Assassin's Handbook. It's now, I'm writing or finishing up the 22nd novel in the series. And so it's been a fun ride. Let's put it that way.
Very cool. I'll go ahead and let the others introduce, and then I'll come back to you with the first question. Michelle, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Michelle Cox. I write the Henrietta and Inspector Howard series. So it is a mystery romance series set in the 1930s. There are 5 books out so far, and book 6, A Spying Eye, comes out in October. And I think I'm up to, I think it's about 60 international awards so far for the series. So super proud of that. And yay, thanks. Yeah, and looking forward to starting book 7. So there you go.
Saralyn, how about you?
Well, I'm a BOI, which the Houston audience will know means that I was born on Galveston Island. And I lived most of my adult life, though, in the Midwest, where I was a teacher, administrator, and school improvement consultant, but always wanted to be a writer. So I moved back to Galveston in 2005 and finished up some other work and decided to get to the writing. And I've published 6 books now since 2013. I've got a new one coming out very soon. And I'm going to republish my Detective Parrot series this coming month in August.
Do you want to say something about the Author Talk Network?
Yes, we are 19 proud authors who have joined together. We all love doing these panel discussions and other talks. We love talking about our work. We love helping other authors. We love helping readers find good books. Very few of us have met each other in person, but we have met each other virtually many times, and we are a pretty close group. And we speak about a number of different topics. So if you have other organizations that need speakers who are writers and speakers, we're happy to oblige.
Sounds great. All right, well, Josie, well, first of all, do I see a couple of questions in the chat, Alicia?
No questions, just, hello and welcome to the meeting.
Okay, all right. Well, I wanted to honor your request. Okay, so Josie, let's start with you. Why write a series as opposed to a standalone mystery?
In the case of The Housewife Assassin's Handbook, I didn't write it necessarily thinking it was going to be a series. It depended on you know, how it would do, you know, how it would sell to New York, quite frankly. And as it turns out, it did get bidded up. It got bidded up by 3 houses. And then they all backed out because they said, we can't see a mother of 3 being an assassin, which today, that's almost like a ridiculous, you know, premise.
Sorry, that is funny. Yeah, no.
So I kind of held it back. I love you know, when you write a book and you get chills when you're doing it, you know, you're doing something right. So I was selling other books to New York, but I decided to hold on to that one myself after that. And then it was a good decision that I did, because the readers pretty much told me, wow, you know, keep this going. And I did leave it open-ended at the end. And I'm kind of glad I did, because it is a series that there's always a topic you can write about when it comes to espionage and international affairs. And every time, you know, I have a file in my Dropbox that is bulging, you know, I'll have to get more Dropbox memory soon. And I have, you know, I don't know how many terabytes already that are just research files on the topic of international espionage and international terrorism, domestic terrorism. It just keeps going on and on and on. And I have several sources for that as well. And I have several white papers that I subscribe to, and it just keeps going. I mean, but the reality is the book has got to be more than the plot. It has to be the characters too. And my character, because she does have 3 children, there is there's always something family-wise happening. So it's a fun series to write. It has something for everyone. And I find that out from my readers.
Well, I like that you trusted your instinct and realized that, you know, there was something wrong with people not understanding the potential for that. And
you know, I think that we sometimes have the pulse on our readers more so than sometimes the people that are, you know, acquiring our books. So never give up. If you believe in something hard enough, it'll, you know, I've gotten television interest in the book. So I know that there are things that just hit at a certain point in time, and you just have to be there with the market.
Michelle, why did you decide to write a mystery series as opposed to a completely different genre of fiction?
That's a good question. You know, I at the time when I started, kind of like Josie, I wasn't sure it was going to be a series. I had written a different book, a historical fiction novel, and similarly, I could not find a publisher for it. So I thought, well, a mystery would be more marketable perhaps, or more attractive to an agent. I'm not really sure that that's actually true, but at the time that's what I thought. So I jumped into this mystery book, and the first one of the series, it's called A Girl Like You. And halfway through it, I just really fell in love with these characters and really wanted to keep this series going. So that's how I ended up in mystery. It was actually, you know, I wasn't really super thought out ahead of time, but it has worked out. So that's that.
And I'll tell you, I'm a big series fan, and
Yeah.
there's a blog called Book Series in Order.
Yes, I've heard of that.
And I have run across authors that I would start with book number 1, and by gosh, I read all the way to book 25. You know, I love the development of characters, and I'm a series fan, freak really.
I agree with that. I mean, so a lot of people ask me, can you read the books out of order? And technically, I guess you could, but why would you want to?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want to start with book 1? Because you get to know the characters. And in my series, they really develop over time. As you were saying, this is really more about these characters and kind of everything that's going on with them. And there's just happens to be a mystery swirling around in the background. So
it's really about the people.
Yeah.
Okay, Saralyn, tension is an important part of every mystery. How do you use tension to move the plot forward and keep the reader engaged?
Well, I love that question, because I have to remind myself all the time about tension. And I have a big sign up right in front of me here that says tension. Because I get lost too in my characters, and I'm busy developing them and revealing them. And I sometimes forget that this is a mystery, and people have come to this expecting tension, and they're expecting suspense and you know, that high charge, fast pace. And I think we owe it to our readers who are when we write a genre, we owe it to our readers to give them what they've come for. So I'm always reminding myself to turn up the tension, but at the same time, you can't give too much tension because you'll burn your reader out. By chapter 3, they'll be just worn out. So you have to do some tension and then release of tension, and tension and release of tension. I always try to end each chapter with something provocative that creates tension, that will be a page turner of some kind. And of course, I want to have some tension at the very end, a big, you know, blockbuster scene at the end of the book that will bring about a satisfying close to the book. And I think that's one of the trickier things that we as authors play with each subsequent book. I think we're always learning about pacing and tension, because those are some fine points of writing.
I found in writing my first story that everything was exciting except my heroine, who just went about her day every day, you know, eating meals and running on the beach. There wasn't anything exciting. I just wrote tension in caps on my notes here. And I like that. I like that a lot. Josie, are you a plotter or a pantser?
I'm a total plotter. I outline every book. I've done my own version of Save the Cat, where I know where my peaks are and how to ratchet up the tension when needed. And I usually don't even start writing until I've got that fully outlined. But then sometimes I'll, you know, my books always start off with a caper of some sort. And then sometimes it's related, but sometimes it's not related to what's going to be happening somewhere else in the book. So that kind of gives me a little bit of a, you know, I put my feet back in the water, shall we say, of the pond of drama that I've created. But it gets my voice. It gets me back into the voice of my heroine, Donna Stone. So that's how I, you know, build on that. And then I jump into, okay, how does this tie back to my outline, you know? And, you know, the Germans have a good saying. You start, you know, what do you want for the outcome? That's where you start, and then you work your way backwards. I feel that works well with books as well. You know, where do you want to end up? You want to end up with, oh, and then you kind of, okay, how do I get there? So that's how I look at a book and how to plot it.
I listened to a criminologist talk about how he would have writers write to him and say, okay, now how do I sprinkle the clues and get it to work out? And he said, you have to start with the item and work the clues backwards. He said that has to be the first part of any mystery story, not the story itself, but the evidence has to backtrack all the way to the front, and that way you don't leave anything out. So that means I were a plotter. I wish I were. I'm trying to go better. Michelle, why do you choose to set your mysteries in the past? That sounds like a lot of work.
No, it's easier because I don't have to deal with technology.
That's true.
Yeah. So no, I mean, I just have this, I don't know, I have a great love of the past. I've always been kind of obsessed with, you know, books from the past and stories from the past. And I used to work in a nursing home, and I have so many stories from those people who had this sort of heyday in the 30s and 40s. And I've turned a lot of those stories into my weekly blog posts, novel notes of local lore, but I've saved the really, really juicy ones for novels. And I just feel like, I don't know, I just feel like this connection to the past, and it's very easy for me to write in the past. I do have to do some research, of course, but a lot of those details already live somewhere in my head. So I don't know, I just really enjoy it. And the main character of my series, Henrietta, is actually based on a woman who I met when I was working in the nursing home. So a lot of book one, A Girl Like You, actually really did happen. The burlesque call and all of that kind of stuff really did happen. So yeah, it was just like a natural thing for me.
Saralyn, what role does character motivation play in your books? And is motivation more important in a mystery than in other types of genres?
I think character motivation is more important in a mystery. And the reason is you have to have, in every mystery, you have to have a victim, you have to have a perpetrator, you have to have suspects. And what makes a good suspect? There are three things: opportunity, weapon, and motive. So you have to be able to throw some motive at anybody that you're considering as a suspect. And you have to make that work within the framework of the character that you've created. So you have to really know your characters well and know what motivates them, what emotions they have, what kind of responses they have to things when they're under stress. And once you create all of that, I think that's the plotting, at least for me, that's the plotting of the book. Once you have all the character motivations, everybody just acts out their parts. Then you have a book.
Do you, in the sort of almost like a plotter, do you plot out everyone's individual motivations?
I do, but I don't write it down. I plot it in my head. And you know, so far I've been able to keep everything straight. One of these days I'll probably have to start writing it down.
No, that sounds like works for you. Alicia, are there any questions in the chat?
No.
I just thought I'd ask. Okay, back to Josie. Josie, how and where do you do your research for your writing and your novels?
All over the place. I'm like a librarian. I can bookworm into any database and essentially pull out what I need. And I subscribe to several magazines that have to do with foreign affairs and also technology, like Wired magazine. And then, of course, I troll, you know, everything from the FBI to the NSA. So I actually do have sources, and I do have people that fill me in on certain things, like if I'm looking for a particular type of weapon, what I would use and how it would be done, like in this particular book. My heroine has to shoot somebody with a bow and arrow. So I've had two experts telling me, okay, this is what she would use, and this is why she would use this, and so on and so forth. So it's a fun way of research. To me is sort of like, you know, it's candy, you know, so that's the fun part for me. But then, you know, again, you have to use it in a way that it sounds believable, that it's, you know, you're not telling the reader, you're showing the reader what needs to be done. There was in one of my books, I had to shoot down sort of a, you know, sort of like a blue miss, you know, like Blue Origin, you know, shuttle. So that was fun. That was fun doing the research for that and how it would happen. And you know, and that was like a 3 or 4 day back and forth with an expert on, okay, this is how you can take it down. But, you know, not kill anybody. Obviously there was nobody in it, but it was sort of like at a party, somebody was shooting one off because he was a, you know, tech bazillionaire. And, but he was shooting something up that was a satellite that had to do with the Russians or something like that. So I had to shoot it back down before it went up. So that was kind of fun. That's the kind of, you know, that's the kind of wormhole I end up going into.
I was going to say, do you, since research can be awfully tempting on its own and it can kind of take you away from the writing part, do you ever get sucked into the wormhole?
Well, what you have to, when I look at my outline, I go, okay, this chapter is about that, or this scene is about that. And I know, my chapters usually run, I would say, about 10 pages. So maybe about, 2,500 to 3,500 words, depending. They get shorter on the back end because as you reach a climax, things kind of contract and you want more pacing. You want the pacing to be different. But in that particular, when I have something like that, I have to explain enough of it to the reader that they feel like they're there in the moment, but I don't have to get too technical about it because they don't need to know that. I needed to know it so that I can do the right thing. And somebody doesn't write me and say, did you know you were supposed to do this instead of that? I hate those letters, but I take them to heart. And, like I had a person who does quality control for helicopters for the Royal British, Navy, write me, who reads my books. And she wrote me and she said, they should have been in this helicopter, not that helicopter. And I'm like, thank you for telling me. Can I use you as a source? And she goes, oh, please do. And I've had a couple of pilots, so that's been great, who also feel that way. And, so you'll find people or they'll find you. And that's even more, that's even better because you don't want to come off looking like, oh, I don't mind that my heroine is Bond-like, but I don't want her to get away with a few scrapes and scratches either. I want it to be as realistic as possible. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. You develop frenemies from your readers that you make friends out of them.
Right, I do.
By asking them to be references for you. I think that's great.
Yeah.
All right, Michelle, do your historical mysteries involve real people from the past? And I think you alluded to that.
Yeah. The main character, Henrietta, as I said, is based on a real person, and she had this amazing life in Chicago in the 30s and 40s. So even though it was the Great Depression, she was apparently this beautiful bombshell. And she used to tell me all the time, she used to follow me around in the nursing home and say, once upon a time, I had a man-stopping body and a personality to go with it. I'm like, who says that? So even then I thought, that'd be a great novel. And then so like 20 years later, when I was looking around for a topic, I, came up, went back to her story. And she never had a problem getting a job during the Depression, which I think is really interesting. She had a problem keeping jobs. So she would always be felt up by some manager or some employee, and she would have none of it. So she would slap them and then she would be out. And I just thought, that would take an incredible amount of courage to do that during the Great Depression when jobs were so terrible. And she told me about in the story, she ends up going, she's like a taxi dancer and she's a burlesque theater usherette. So there's all these like crazy jobs that she has in the book, and those were all real. And when she described the scene in the book where she goes to apply to be an usherette at a burlesque hall, that whole chapter is almost verbatim from her. And she talks about how the line of girls went all the way around the block waiting for a chance to get into this place. So there's a lot, like I said, that I kind of took from her life to put into the book. And as far as other characters go, they're not really real people. Well, there is a character named Stan who apparently there was a little group of boys that would follow this woman around Chicago because they knew that she was a good girl and they were from her neighborhood, and they really worried about her because she had all these weird, strange jobs at night. And they would wait for her and follow her home in a distance to make sure that she got home. And when this woman told me that story, I was just so moved by that. I'm like, I really want to write this into the novel as well, but I can't write this big gang of boys. So I smushed all of them into the character of Stan. So Stan is the loveless guy who's always following her around and, actually causing more problems than solving them. So Yeah. And of course, book 6, I have to throw this out there. Clive and Henrietta end up going to Europe. And of course, they have a run-in with Hitler and the Nazis over the theft of a very, very famous painting, which actually really did happen. So that's it.
Does any of Michelle herself work her way into any of the characters? Since you're in historical, are you put yourself back there?
I definitely, I mean, I feel like there's a little part of me in a lot of the characters, of course, Henrietta, but even Clive, I think there's a little bit of me. And Henrietta's younger sister, Elsie, who is actually a little bit more shy and more of a bookworm. There's a lot of me in her as well. So I think that we all do that as writers.
I think so too. Well, it'd be different. If you can think of the history and you're like, well, I wasn't really back there, so how would I know? But I was just curious if it can still permeate through.
Definitely, because I feel like a part of my brain is always in the past, so it's not hard to imagine myself back there.
Another life.
Yeah.
All right, Saralyn, how do you strike the right balance between too much and too little foreshadowing?
Well, I think that's a really difficult part of being a mystery writer, because people who read mysteries love to be surprised. And they love to figure out, try to match wits with the author and try to figure out the ending before the ending actually happens. But at the same time, they don't like to be blindsided. I remember when Agatha Christie's book, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, came out. And that was probably her most controversial book. I'm not going to give away the reason that it was so controversial, but there was a lot of criticism over that book because people felt that she cheated the reader of clues. The ending was something that was so unpredictable, the reader just had no way of matching wits with the author. So I think that it's the job of the author to create this delightful surprise, but also to lay clues and red herrings too, that will make the reader feel like, oh, gee, I should have realized that when I read it. And now I see, I think that's the happiest outcome for both author and reader.
What, based on reader feedback for you, what percentage of your readers do you feel are trying to catch the mystery, before, in other words, figure it out before the end, as compared to others who are enjoying the setting and the characterization and things like that? Do you think most people want to beat the author, at guessing who done it?
I think everybody wants to beat the author to some degree. There's some people where that's a big priority, and there are other people where it's a much lesser priority. But I think every mystery reader approaches the mystery with, who did it? Mm-hmm. And that's why they call it a whodunit. Who did it? And let me see if I can figure out who did it.
Makes sense. All right, Josie, in our membership, we have a lot of new, unpublished, working on it type of authors. What advice would you give to people starting out in the mystery writing genre? What advice do you think would be helpful?
I've always felt that if you follow tropes, you're not going to surprise. If you're looking for an agent, you're not going to surprise an agent. At the same time, they put you in a box because they want the same that's been successful, but they want it without the tropes. So it's a fine line, and it takes a very special writer to move and say, okay, this is the kind of story they want me to write, but they want me to surprise them when I write it. And that is a very difficult thing to do. but you can do it. Nobody says you can't do it. It's just how you do it and why you do it. And if you're doing it just to please an agent, it may not be the book that you want. You know, I truly believe that everybody should write the book that's in them first and then modify it if you get feedback that it's not what's selling. But if you're looking to just sell a book, that's going to be the hardest way to write a book. There's too many cats in that bag, and none of them really have the right, their claws aren't in the right place. And that place should be in your career. And if that's the case, then yeah, move forward with what they're saying, because they're giving you the best advice for the kind of writer that you are. So I truly believe that we need to look at, the writer needs to look at the story first. And if it satisfies you, that's the first step. If it satisfies your beta readers, your critique partners, and they're like, wow, 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 then that's also a good sign. And then if you get agent interest, or if you already have an agent and the agent goes, I can sell this tomorrow, let's put it out there, grand slam, home run, you made it.
Sounds good. I like the
All
idea
right,
of writing your story first, your own story.
Virginia would like to know if there is any advantage to writing a historical mystery in the first person versus close third.
Well, I'll take a stab at that one. I don't know if there's any advantage to it. I think it's kind of what you're comfortable with. And if you want to tell the whole mystery from that one person's point of view. So sometimes in a mystery, it's helpful to be in the head of at least maybe one or two other characters, because you can, I think it makes the mystery more interesting, and you can not trick the readers, but kind of lead them astray a little bit sometimes. But that doesn't mean that you can't do it with first person. I definitely think you can. I don't think there's any advantage either way, besides what I've just said. Anybody, Josie?
Yeah, I was going to say, Michelle, I think you hit it right on the head. I think the story tells you how to write it. If you need multiple points of view, then that's third person, and you can hop into different people's heads with scene breaks. If it's somebody's story, and then you move with their sight line, with what their peripheral vision is and what they're seeing, and that's how and then you become that storyteller, that individual storyteller's story of, soup to nuts, what they saw from point A to point Z.
Yeah,
I have something to add to that too. My most recent book was written in third person close point of view. And I wanted to try that. I had never done that before. And I wanted to try it because of what Josie just said. It served the story better. And it without being in first person, I was able to stick to one person's point of view throughout the entire book. So she had to be in every scene. She had to be in every chapter. Sometimes I wanted to give somebody else's point of view, but I couldn't, because I had committed myself to just telling Quinn's story. But the result, when I was writing it, I felt like I was Quinn. It was that intense. I was really so into her head that I felt like I was Quinn. And the feedback that I've gotten from readers is the same thing, that because of that close point of view, readers feel like they are Quinn. And so I think that's the advantage of third person close, whether you're doing third person otherwise or first person, you get that intensity.
Iona has a question. She says, any idea of the age group of cozy / mystery readers these days? Does it depend on the subgenre?
I get people that read across the board myself. I get younger readers, I get older readers. My heroine happens to be right about 40 right about now. She started out when she was like 30. I think in your mind's eye, you're still 30 in a lot of ways. You never leave who you are. So, and I remember reading as a teen or late teen and early 20 person, reading about people in their 40s and 50s, and it never turned me off. So I don't think that you have to write to an audience. I think your audience finds your writing.
Any other questions? All right, let me
No.
I've got a couple more prepared questions, and then maybe we can just open it up to kind of some free question and answering. Michelle, when writing a series, how do you wrap up the mystery in each book, but leave enough dangling for the reader to want to pick up the next book? Leave some undangling?
Yeah, exactly. In each book, I make sure that the mystery is completely solved and wrapped up. But that's where your subplots and sub characters can come in, because or some of this character development that you're carrying over from book to book. So I might leave something hanging from the Clive and Henrietta's personal life, or the sub characters subplot I always leave a little bit of a cliffhanger there. And it's definitely a fine balance, because I ran into a little bit of trouble with my second book. I did get some criticism from readers who felt like the cliffhanger was too much. And I was really surprised by that, because it didn't really have anything to do with the mystery, but it was too much of a cliffhanger for something that happened in the background in their personal life, that they were very upset about that. So I learned my lesson, and it definitely is a balancing act. You want to give them a little bit, but not too much.
Last prepared question for Saralyn. Why do you think mystery is one of the most popular genres these days?
Well, I'm an eclectic reader, and I read every genre, but mystery really strikes. My favorite books are mysteries. And I think that's true for me, just like it is for the reading public. Mysteries have a draw that other books don't have. And that draw lies within the puzzle. The mystery presents a puzzle. It's like a game that you have to figure out. You're following clues that the author has laid down for you. It's an intellectual activity. It's an emotional activity. And as it unfolds, the reader is drawn further and further into the world of the book. And I think the reader is closer to the author's intent than in any other genre. So I think mysteries are fun. I don't think they are about violence. They aren't really about murder. What they're about is the solving, the restoration of order, the prevailing of truth and justice. And so there's something edifying about the end of a mystery, because things are brought back to right at the end of the book. And so I think that's particularly satisfying for readers, especially modern readers, because the world is in so much turmoil right now. And you read a mystery book and things come full circle. They come out right in the end. So I think that's one thing that makes it really popular.
It's kind of like one of those packages where you have many packages packed in a box, and then it's in another box, and then it's in it's the uncovering of that inner present that the author gives to the reader. That sounds great. Those are the questions that I had prepared. I think we could maybe open, if people would like to unmute and maybe raise their hand, perhaps Alicia can call on any of our members present with questions. If you'd like to, you don't have to unmask yourself if you want, but or we can just free for all and just try to ask a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Iona.
Oh, thank you. I always have questions. So I recently saw, and I don't know where I saw it, but a little thread that was going through that said, oh, now we have this, people are talking about you to be a real author, real writer, you have to write every day. And then, so then there was the backlash with that saying, oh, you know, you're a writer if you're a writer. Do you have any input? Like, do you advocate is a steady daily writing, or how, you know, how do you do this in this crazy world?
I have a saying about that. I say writers write, you know, painters paint, singers sing, writers write. Okay. I have several musical people in my family. And I remember when one particular person was not singing professionally, but, you know, would talk about it, I would say, then sing, you know. You know, I know a lot of good writers who are not published. And in that regard, I think it's a matter of time before they will be published. So I don't judge them on, oh, how many books do you have? I feel that the craft of writing is like playing the piano. If you sit down and play the piano and practice every day, yes, you're going to be a better pianist. So yes, I do write every day. I feel like I have to, even if it's just a scene, even if it's just a paragraph, I have to write, because that makes me think. When you write, you think. You know, think of it as Riddle, not Wordle. Okay. Get in that paragraph instead of that 5-letter word.
Yeah.
If for those of you, you know, who have their video stopped, if you can see where your little tools are at the bottom of the Zoom screen, there's a category called More. And inside there's a category called Reactions. And inside Reactions, you can raise your hand. So it looks like Nanette has her hand up. If you don't want to show your video, but you would like to ask a question, I recommend you go to that More Reactions and raised hand. Nanette, you had a question?
Yes, I'm wondering how many red herrings you need in a mystery, and if you always need some. You probably do. But is there any sort of rule? I know there's no written rule or anything, but anything that's a good idea for figuring out how many and how much time you need to devote to them?
I'll take that question. I don't think there's any rule that's fast and hard, and I don't think that you actually need any red herrings. What you do need is clues, foreshadowing, bits and pieces that will keep your reader interested in the plot and focused on, you know, the big picture, which is solving the murder.
Right.
A red herring is really nothing more than just misdirection. It's a clue that leads nowhere.
Right.
And so I don't think you have to have those, but I think they are kind of fun for the reader. I think they liven up the book a little bit because it adds a dimension to the reading experience to be able to say, okay, this is a clue, but is it a real one?
Right.
Is this a good clue, or is this misdirected clue? So I think it makes the book a little bit more fun, but I don't think there's any numeral point or value to red herrings.
Okay, thank you.
I was going to go back to Iona's question just really quickly and just jump on what Josie said as well. As far as whether to write every day or what makes you a real writer, I couldn't agree more that, you know, the number of books you have published does not, you know, make you a writer or not. But I do think it's important. I know life gets in the way, but I do think it is important to write every day. I equate it to exercise. Nobody jumps out of bed and says, yay, I want to exercise today. But, you know, you kind of have to make yourself. And I experimented. So I started writing in like 2013. I've been writing pretty much every day. I mean, of course, there's things that get in the way, like I said, but I did take a 6-month break at some point because I thought, you know what, I'm going to take a break and I'm going to just focus on marketing only. And that was a failed experiment because I still had the same mountain of marketing to do. Like it didn't go down at all. And I lost the sort of joy in this whole thing. The writing is the actual joy in this whole industry. So I just feel like it's really important to sort of tap into that. And also, if I go too far afield, like let's say I would miss it for maybe 4 days, I'm out of the story. So, and that takes a lot of time to get back in the story and remember what I was going to do in the first place. That's my advice.
And I'll tack on to that. I agree with everything that both Josie and Michelle have said, but I wrote my most recent book during COVID. And I had nothing else going on. I was, you know, isolated and hibernating, and I had nothing else going on. And so I wrote all day, every day, and sometimes all night too. And so I wrote that book. It was the fastest book I ever wrote because I was spending so much time on task. But it also, I was in the story so much that it took me out of my real life, which was pretty bad. You know, with COVID, it was boring and it was scary. And so I had this other whole life that I was leading. And the consistency of the everyday really made, I think, for a better piece of writing. So.
You know, Michelle, I'm glad you brought up marketing as part of an author's drudge life, the drudgery part of an author's life. Sadly, it is a reality, whether you're, you know, independently published or whether you're published by New York. They only do so much because they have, you know, 12 other authors or 24 that they're doing in any given month. And then they move on to the next 12 or 24. So, you know, you have a finite window, and every book, you know, remember the old, I think it was NBC, you know, if you haven't seen it, it's new to you. Well, the same goes for your books. You know, if you haven't read it, if you haven't read this series, it's new to you. So the idea is to put it into new readers' hands and also remind readers that have discovered it that it's still there for them to rediscover, you know, if they haven't read one of the books in the series. So, you know, one of the joys that I find in these kinds of workshops and calls is that, yeah, maybe of all the people that are here, 2 of you decide, what's her books about? You know, I want to read about her books, and hopefully you'll do that for all of us, and we'll do it for you too. But the reality is that it's a pebble. You're throwing a pebble into a pond, and the pond is very deep. And you know that because you look at what other people have done in their, you know, to have the biggest boulder in the pond. Well, it starts with a pebble. It always starts with a pebble. And, you know, I appreciate the opportunity to throw my pebble into your pond.
Well, and don't forget, you can go to the Houston Sisters in Crime website, just Google it, and our speakers are always listed with their bios. You know, you hang up and you make dinner. Oh my God, what were their names? You know, so please, you know, you like me, who plans to investigate some of y'all as well. Do check our website, if nothing else, if you forget, you know, or our emails notifications. Do we have any other questions?
Gay would like to hear about what the authors are currently working on.
Well, I'm working on book 7 of the series, which will end the series. And I thought what you were saying, Saralyn, was so interesting. I don't know who it was that you referenced, was talking about starting at the end and working backwards. So this last mystery of the series is the most Agatha Christie of all of my books. And so there's, it's a manor house in England and all the characters are there and there's a crime and they have to figure it out. And I am now in the rewrite process and I'm like, if I would have started at the end and worked this way, this whole process would be a lot easier because this book is very reliant on clues and the accurate revealing of those clues at certain, points. So that is what I am working on right now. And as soon as I am done with that, I'm going to start something new and I don't exactly know what that is. So that's kind of fun too. I have a lot of options.
Saralyn, you want to go next?
Sure. I am getting ready to republish the Detective Parrot series, which is the first 2 books are A Murder in the 1% and A Palette for Love and Murder. And I've got the 3rd book almost finished in first draft, and I'm going to publish that too. And it's called Crystal Blue Murder. So those will be my next books out. It'll be 3 books that come out very closely upon one another's heels.
Will Quinn be in another book?
I don't know that yet.
Ah,
I've actually had people ask me that because Quinn is from Bad Blood Sisters. She works in a mortuary.
mhm.
So that's a natural for lots of stories that have to do with murders and death. So yeah, I might go back to
In
Quinn.
your spare time, please.
Well, I'll need something else to write. So I can't stop writing. I'm driven.
I'm working on the 22nd novel of the Housewife Assassin series. It's called Manners, Missiles, and Mayhem. And her mission, Donna's mission and her mission team is to weed out some domestic terrorists who that are working with Russia and know where our missile sites are. We have about 400 of them. And there are some that are very integral to, how we stay in the game, and they need to stop the mayhem before it happens. So it's what I'm working on now. I've also, I've kind of leaped into Michelle's area with historical because I always thought I was going to be a historical writer, believe it or not. And I couldn't believe that I took so long to write my first historical. It's more of a saga. So it should be interesting to see where that goes. But that probably won't be out for a couple of years. So.
Dina, looks like you have a question.
Yes, I do. Hi there. Hello from somewhat sunny Northern California. I have a question in that I am working with an agent for the first time, and she's trying to get me to cut down my book to a certain level. And I'm coming to a point where I'm saying, well, now wait a minute. She wants 88,000 words, and it's really coming out to be about 89 to 90. Where do you draw the line? Where do you come back and say, wait a minute, this is the book. Let's talk about real edits. Are you telling me that we could cut a scene or something? But at this point, she's not telling me real edits. She's just saying, oh, cut it back to 88,000. What do you think about that?
Well, I just cut 7,000 words from my historical. And, being a historical, it's a little bit more, the theme is more Edith Wharton than it is Josie Brown, So you can do it, but I wouldn't be cutting scenes per se. I'd be looking at sentence structure and do line edits and just go through it and go, I don't need this word. No,
Yeah.
I can do this sentence in 3 words, not, 7. I think that's how I would approach it. And that's how I approached it. I didn't cut scenes. If I didn't need dialogue, I didn't have dialogue, so that's what I would do.
Okay. I've knocked about 3,000 out at the moment, but I'm kind of getting to that point where I'm kind of needing to add a couple of things back to do the clarification. I'm cutting out repetitive words, but I'm not making that goal of hers. And I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm saying, but it's there. So now we need to either have a real edit or it's going to be 89.
Yeah, well, I would just, again, look at it as not as a scene, you're cutting scenes, you're shaving words. Okay, it's like a snow cone,
Yeah.
think of it as
I
a
like
snow
that.
cone. I mean, that is how I approached it. And I started from the back forward.
Ooh,
I did that specifically because, first of all, those scenes were smaller, and it's a 50-year saga. So language itself was a little less flowery by the time you reach the 1930s than when you're in the 1880s, right?
right.
So I was able to look at sentences and go, okay, don't need that. And I'm serious. I might cut 2 words. It was so funny. I was looking at, I need to cut, 600 words in each chapter, but you don't need to. You need to cut maybe, 48, maybe 4 words in a scene or 5 words in a scene. I had 50, that book has 51 chapters. It was 105 and it went down to 98.
Wow. Okay. That's great. Thank you.
Also, if you get in a pinch at the end, someone gave me this tip to do a search for the word that
Yeah.
and other superfluous words like there, THERE, or it, and just see how many times you have used that word, because a lot of times you can cut those words and they end up making a big difference.
That's
I
true.
checked on self and found that I was doing a reflective. He had himself, he got himself, that kind of thing, and like knocked out 300 words.
Wow.
Wow.
Someone asked the question, what is the name of Josie's historical novel?
It's not out yet, and I'm not releasing the name yet.
Oh, okay. That was just a question in the chat.
But you'll love it when it comes
Yeah.
out.
Okay.
Virginia would also like to know how you found your publishers.
Well, mine were always at auction, so I would always go with a lot of money, whichever offered the most money.
My publisher is She Writes Press, which is a hybrid press. So I'm sort of in between traditional and self. And I first heard about them when I went to the Writers Digest conference in New York. And I think it was 2013, 14, something like that. So yeah, that's how I found them. And that was a very good fit for me. I have written 2 standalone historical novels, and I am currently trying to shop those for an agent for a Big 5 publisher. So hopefully by the time my career is over, I will have dipped my toe in every sort of type of publishing, traditional, self, and hybrid. So that's my goal.
And I have done both self-publishing or independent publishing and traditional publishing. And I've had 2 different publishers who both take manuscripts without an agent. So I'm unagented, but I did do a search for an agent. I did actually have some agent contracts presented to me, but I chose to remain unagented.
Nanette, do you still have a question?
Yes, aside from social media, how do you do marketing? What do you do with it?
I find my strongest marketing is with the creation of my newsletter and building my newsletter subscribers, because they're the ones that if they like you, they want to know what's going to be happening with you next. They don't mind getting something from you once a month that might be, oh, here's a podcast that I was just doing, or a workshop that I just did, or here's a recipe. They don't mind knowing a little bit about my life. My husband is a recent cancer survivor, and we kept that under wraps for a while. And then when he said, I'm ready to go public with it, we did, and the outpouring was incredible. And I would not have believed, how many people had been through that journey and saw the other side. And, I was wondering if we were going to see the other side. So sometimes just being human and is the best way to find and love they love you and you can love them back. And the best way to love them back is to let them know, hey, I'm here and I'm thinking about you too. So
Thank you.
And book clubs and events like this one are, you don't do them exactly for marketing, but they end up helping you with marketing, because word of mouth is your biggest selling tool. And the more people who know about you, the more people who are going to talk about you in your books, and that's going to get your book out there.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything that you said, Saralyn and Josie. Adding to that, I guess one trick that has worked really well for me is book tours. So you put your book on a tour, you hire a book tour organizer. There's a lot of them out there. So obviously you would find a credible one, but and then they list your book to their stable of reviewers, and then reviewers sign up, and then they blast your book all over Instagram, and now they're starting to do it on TikTok as well. So that's a great way to get your book exposed exponentially to more and more and more readers. And also something that has been very effective for me is giveaways. I do huge giveaways for my newsletter subscribers. So I put together these big packages about 4 times a year with like an iPad, a set of books, some luggage, jewelry, whatever. There's always a theme. And then I have people sign up for my newsletter as a way to enter the contest. And sometimes I throw in other things like you have to follow me on Instagram or whatever, but that tends to expose you to all of their followers when they share that post. So that's been very effective.
Very good idea.
I'll say in the first couple of years when we were in the pandemic and trying to keep our chapter afloat, a good 60% of the speakers were authors that I read that I liked. And I would just try to contact them and say, hey, would you talk to our group? So I know how important that is.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Iona?
Okay, hi. I was wondering about back in the day, and I'm old enough to say that, but we kind of went with the New York Times when it was just, there was no self-publishing or hybrid or any of this, and I think Bill Patrick called it a push down. Basically the publishers told us what was good and what we should read. Now we have just the opposite. We have kind of like this, huge kind of cornucopia of things that we can read. So, I think as a reader, I'm always looking for some way to find out who they are. And, obviously use friends and all that kind of stuff. But I was wondering how you feel like Goodreads. Is it still something that is viable?
I love Goodreads myself. I find authors to read via Goodreads. My only wish about Goodreads was that it was more, that authors could do more interaction with readers there. But I think somebody's going to create that platform somehow at some point, because the joy of having, having written a book is communing with people who may want to read your book or have read your book. So, if anybody's on the Goodreads library panel, please consider that. The authors would support you wholly on that. So,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Bookreads is its own great community of readers, totally separate from somewhere like Amazon. It's very, very different vibe. I just wish the same, that I wish they would redo their website or make the interface a little bit more user friendly.
Right.
BookBub does the same thing.
That's true.
BookBub is a nice alternative to Goodreads.
Yes.
yeah, the only problem with BookBub is it's pay to play, essentially. In essence, that either you or your publisher has to fork over the dough to be seen on that platform, whereas Goodreads is totally reader driven, which is kind of nice. So it would be nice if there was a place that was both, was a, sort of a, hey, meet and greet both the author and the readers. So
Would be.
Like I mentioned before, that you can get on the little newsletter. It's once a week, maybe, or less than that, book series in order, book.
yes, I love that. I love that.
Yeah, because you could amazing the authors I'd never heard of that had written so many books, and they're just, and I'm a serial series reader too. One first and start that way. So I really recommend anyone sign up for that, at least as another option for finding new authors. And it's not just mystery, it's all genres. It's horror and it's fantasy, it's all kinds of stuff. So no matter what your interest, it has a little bit for everybody.
Athena, do you have a question? Because I see your hand is raised.
I think that might still be her same.
I think that's leftover. Let me get in there and take it down.
Okay.
All right, well, I just want to thank our guests for the amazing, wonderful, spirited, this is the most interactive thing the sisters have done in a long time. It's really exciting, and I know I've enjoyed it, and I know the rest of us have as well. So I really
I
hope
got two great partners in crime right there.
you guys are a great team. You complement each other beautifully. I hope everybody checks out their books. I certainly plan to. And we appreciate you coming, and thank you for your time. And I'm looking at the little recording button. It's still there. So when I shut the meeting down in a few hours, I should have the recording, and it'll be posted on, for those our members who missed this, we'll be posting it on our website, and y'all will be, using it to your advantage as well. So thank you so much for coming. This was absolutely wonderful, and we really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Bye. Stay cool.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.